and this is our first episode of Writing Rewind, where I will be teaching you some different writing strategies from the week. Hope you enjoy it. Today's episode is all about organizing your story to have a clear and focused plot line. Most story plot lines are supposed to look like this. They start off introducing the story, then the excitement builds up until the climax at the top of our hill, and then there's the resolution where it ends. But sometimes we get carried away and we can't follow an organized path. And our story plot line ends up like this. We go here, there, and everywhere, and we jump back to the beginning, we jump to the end, and then we add more to the middle, and it's very confusing for the reader. So today we're going to talk about how to help ourselves stay organized. Today I'm going to be talking about my story, The Canoe Trip of Doom, and I'm going to be using this planner, this outline, to help me stay focused. So the first thing I'm going to do is think of the problem, because that's really the reason why I'm writing the story. If your story doesn't have a problem, then you need to go back to your notebook and your generating ideas list and pick a different one, because it needs to have a problem. So I know my problem is that I went with my canoe into a tree where there's lots of spiders. So really, I know that's going to be the heart of my story, because that's the best part of the story, and that's why I'm telling it. So I'm going to write a heart, because I know like this is the biggest part, and write canoe into trees. Notice that since I'm just planning, I don't have to have complete sentences. Next, I'm going to do a brain dump about the problem. I'm going to think of obviously what happened, along with the setting, any different feelings I had, some sensory details, and anything else I can remember that I think is important to add. So, okay, I was on a river. It was the Meekan River, and it smelled sort of like a dirty river, so smelled like a dirty river. And I would go on and on here. I would talk about how scared I was. I would describe like the spiders that were starting to lower down and how I've never seen such long legs on them. And I can also describe how my sister's face was so panicked when she had jumped out of the canoe, and she was also feeling so sad and upset that she had left me. So these are all things I would write down here. For time's sake, I'm not going to write it down. I'm just going to talk about it with you. So next, I want to backtrack. I want to think about, well, what happened before I got to the heart of the story? When we were reading some of your narratives, some people sort of jumped into the story a little too quickly or took too much time talking about what happened before. So for your sake, I'll just tell you what happened in my story. I was camping with my sister Heather, and I could talk about how we had to get together, and she was in Madison and I was in Milwaukee, but some of that's sort of boring. It's just, we can kind of skip into that and just say we started at the campground. So I'm gonna write, we started at the campground. And I'm going to start the morning of, because I already knew I was going camping or canoeing, and I was really excited. So I'm just going to say morning of. We made breakfast. We talked about previous trips, because we used to canoe on this river, so we had a lot to be thinking about. We were excited. So talk about past. And then I could talk about how we went to this barn and we had to pay a certain amount of money and we had to get life vests. But some of that we could sort of gloss over and just say we went to the barn and we got what we needed, and then we went down to the river. So I'm here at the river, and there was an older gentleman who was helping us get set up, and he brought a canoe out and the oars. And that's when he started setting up the story for us. Now remember, you want the beginning of your story to relate to the middle of your story, the heart of the story. So this is where he set up the problem. He said, well, ladies, we haven't had a lot of rain lately, and you're gonna have to step into the river and walk your canoe down till it gets a little deeper. So we were already feeling nervous. So that's what I would write down here about, well, there wasn't a lot of water here. So already it sets the tone like, ooh, this is ominous. Maybe something bad is gonna happen on this canoe trip. Okay, so now this is basically where I can start telling the story of the heart of the story, where we're in the canoe and then more problems occur. So we start writing about that. And then I'm gonna kind of skip over that because that part is written in my example for you. But I'm gonna skip over to the end because, as we know, my story, it ended with me in the canoe in a tree with the spiders, and then Heather pulled me out and I walked us back upstream. So it's important that I really resolve my story. I would never just end it and I landed in the tree and spiders fell on me. The end. Everyone wants to know, like, well, what happened to you? Did you get out okay? Did your sister help you out? So I explained, we went upstream, and I talked about why that was challenging, going up the river with the branches underneath. And then I had some final reflections that I shared. I said, we laid on the grass, and I was thinking, I never want to go canoeing again. And I looked at Heather and I said, I'm mad because you made us go on this canoe trip and you left me in the tree. So I said, you need to go get me some ice cream. So that's where it's resolving the story. And then I had one final lesson, and I learned a bunch of different things. I could have said, like, always be prepared on a canoeing trip, go with people who are brave, and I think I said, I know one lesson: don't go canoeing in Wisconsin when it's spider season. So that's how I know that the reader will understand my story has ended. Okay, here's a couple tips for you. Here's some tips. If you're still having a hard time staying focused, try writing your story on some Post-its. That way you can move them around without worrying about where your pencils are, things like that. Or let's say you've written everything already, either on your iPad or a computer or your notebook. You could just use a marker or a pencil and number the sections. And that way you know, like, oh, hey, this is actually in the beginning, or this is so should be in the end. Or you could read it to a friend. Sometimes having a friend read it can really give you some awesome feedback. And something that I always do is I read it out loud to myself. That way I catch a lot of simple mistakes that I maybe wouldn't have caught if I was just reading it, because your brain is pretty cool where sometimes when it sees a mistake, it automatically fixes it without you having to be like, oh, I made a mistake there. But if you read it out loud, then sometimes you catch those mistakes. Well, fourth graders, I hope this was an informative video for you of Writing Rewind.